Okay. Welcome to the final episode of season 2 of Leading Through Stories. With me today is Helen Rose, who's passionate about grief, Mary McAleese, who's an educational leader, and of course me, Kristy Wolf. I believe there's power in stories. Now, with this being our last episode, we want to draw your attention to what we had set out as the kind of purpose and the why behind our work. So I'm going to actually just read this because it's something that we put a lot of work into 2 years ago when we first started doing Leading Through Stories. We believe everyone is a leader from where they stand and that we all have a story to tell. By sharing our stories, we create connections, build relationships, and support ourselves and each other through comfortable as well as uncomfortable experiences. Leading Through Stories is an authentic conversation about successes, learnings, and sometimes the things we would rather forget. Our hope is that our community will be actively engaged in this process with us. Ladies, I think that is absolutely what we were just talking about. We've been talking probably for the last 40 minutes, honestly, about just like what we remember and things that have come up. And so we didn't read that statement. We just said we were going to talk about it. And reading that is exactly what our conversation was just about. So
Kristy, when you said 2 years, I went, oh my God, it's been 2 years already. How quickly did that time pass? It's really interesting when you think about timelines. I'm flabbergasted. I went, oh yeah, it has been 2 years. When I think back to the why behind this podcast, I'll say this very transparently. When we decided podcast, I thought, oh my God, there's no way on God's green earth that I am at all interested in a podcast. I was nervous. I didn't know what that would look like or sound like. I mean, not an expert at podcasting by any stretch, but as I think back and look ahead to today, ladies, here's what I believe we need to be really proud of. We took risk. It was about the relationship development between obviously the three of us on screen, and how blessed do I feel to have gotten to know you even more, Kristy and Helen, and to learn alongside you, but also how organic this process was. Yes, it was about relationships with each other and our audience out there. And audience out there, thank you so much for being involved in this process with us. But it's also about three things that we've been reflecting on. What has worked really well? What caused us almost that pause, that pregnant pause, and kind of say, what does this need to now look like? And that's when we started to invite our guests. And as we think about our celebrations, I can't but thank those guests who populated not only our thinking and our podcast time, but also had allowed us to become better as human beings as a trio on the screen. So just really interesting. 2 years later, here we are.
Yeah. Well, and let's go back to that 2 years ago, right in the beginning. I knew Mary through education in Edmonton, and I knew Helen from the Bow Valley, but you guys had never met. And I was like, hey, I want to do this with Helen. Mary, what do you think? And we do you remember sitting down for that phone conversation over coffee?
Yeah. Verde, in front of the Verde Spa, remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I know when you said as exact kind of to echo what Mary said, 2 years. It's like, huh? It didn't feel like 2 years. The favorite part for me was obviously getting to know you two. I love you guys. You're in my life. You're stuck with me forever. But every single show, there wasn't a time when I didn't take something away from it, right? And I think you have to remain humble when you're doing things like this, because you don't know all, and there's so much in the world that we can learn, or even what's the word? Cement or echo what we're feeling. It's nice to hear someone else feels the same way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that first year I think we had about 8 episodes. It was just the three of us having conversations about things that were going on. And it was COVID. Like, we were still in the full stream of COVID. So having that opportunity to talk to you guys and have a plan and know we are going to get to talk was something that definitely got me through some of that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was about, okay, what are we doing? How are we learning this? I mean, Helen had a podcast, but Mary, you said prior to us going live today that you felt like throwing up that first day that we were going live. That and you present. You've been a teacher and an educator for years. You've done conferences. And so just that facing some of the things we hadn't done. None of us had ever used, we use a platform called StreamYard. I had never set up things to share to YouTube. Like these were all things that we had to learn as we were going. And one of my favorite parts is that I've taken all of these little things and learned. I was saying to these women that we have a new podcast with Wolfpack Warriors Foundation called Give, Amplify, Connect. It's had one episode, but everything I've learned how to do for that has come from this podcast and like just building on skills and trying things out. And so I want to thank both of you just for that opportunity to be able to experiment and get some feedback about how things are going. And that's been just a phenomenal part of this whole Leading Through Stories experiment.
Well, and your point, Kristy, Mary, not once did you look like you were going to bark.
Oh my God. Anyway.
Really? Just so, I mean, I love how you speak. I love how you think and how you give your thoughts across. It's beautiful. Not once did it look not natural for you.
Yeah. You know, as I hear both of you, I think about the word lovin'. You know, I mean, even everything that we've been doing, you know, our work unrelated to kind of podcast. I mean, we met regularly, and it was I've got an idea, or I'm hurting, or tell me what you're thinking. I'm planning this. It really is a love-in from the respect of not only from a leadership perspective, as you defined that so beautifully at the beginning, Kristy, and we did spend time identify the why behind this, but also women supporting women, and nothing against men because we all love them. And we want more men being involved in some of our podcasts, maybe in the future, as we think about what next year or the year after might look like. But it truly is a connection between women and supporting each other through the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Kristy, you talked about sometimes having those very uncomfortable conversations. And so thank you for being such a support for me personally.
Oh my gosh. You guys, I'm getting teary. I don't know if you are getting teary, but I thought this conversation would go very easily and we just have our usual talk, but I can feel myself being like, oh no.
Well, Steve, but you're so, I mean, for me, to work with you, you're always like all in. You're so excited. Sleep, but we couldn't have done this. I mean, I know what it takes to run a podcast. It's a lot of work, and you were the driving force behind all of that. Like, you can say we helped out with all the other. I know, you did all the social media. That's not my thing. And to learn a whole new software, it's not an easy thing to do. So, you brought that to it as well.
And one of the things we were talking about was that we did use Instagram as our kind of focal point, and we realized that although I use Instagram a lot, it wasn't the best thing for this group of people, the community that we were looking at building. And so I think all of those things, you try something, there were so many successes we had, and then other things that, oh, okay, that's not the way I would do it moving forward. But when you are already doing it, to change it doesn't always work so easily either. And so I don't know, those are little things that I think about, like that I've learned personally about how to manage this.
I'm thinking about 5 leadership qualities that you have just identified, Helen, as I've listened to you for the past 5 or 6 minutes, and Kristy. It's about empowerment. It's about taking risk. It's about being brave to kind of say, this didn't work. What will it look like? It's about celebrating, and it's about truly having almost a consistent rationale or reason for stepping up. I'm just thinking, we can write an article on this, ladies.
Yeah,
totally good. And it also brings me back to when we were talking about how to get the message out and share the story with people who had signed up for a newsletter. Mary, you were really instrumental in making sure that we had things that people could take back, actionable steps. And that has also been one of the things that has helped me in some of my other roles to think about, okay, not just here's the information, but what's next for people. that if it's something that they're interested in, where can they take that? And so I know you're going to leave us with something today, because it's like the gem that you always put in with what we're doing. But I also wanted to jump ahead to just this year. So the first year that we worked on this podcast, and it wasn't even a podcast at the time, it was just a live stream. We only started the podcast this year, and that was just taking our regular live stream and pulling the audio out and using it and kind of multi-purposing it for people that maybe didn't have the time to do a live stream or prefer to walk and listen to a podcast, and just trying something new. But this year we switched back and forth. So one episode we would have just the three of us, and another episode we would then invite a guest. So here are the episodes. I'm just going to read through them to remind us all about what they were. But first episode this year was Existing in Photos with Alexis McEwen. Then we had Lift Leadership with Mary. We went on to Burnout Recovery with Dr. Lisa Belanger. And then it was with Helen Rose doing Managing the Holidays. In the new year, we had Body Positive with Coach Fiona Groves. We then went into Digital Storytelling with me. And then our last episode was a Physician's Lens with Heather Patterson. I'm gonna say that again, so when I cut the podcast, I can get rid of that mistake, because that's one of the things that I've learned. So, and then our most recent episode was a Physician's Lens with Heather Patterson. And kind of looking back on those, that was something that we talked about. We all really loved bringing a guest in and learning from someone else as well. So we were concerned when we had just the three of us that we'd be interrupting each other all the time. And then we added a fourth.
Kristy, interesting, quickly, that whole idea of interrupting. Here's what we were really brave in as well. As when you listen to us, if we felt that we needed to say something because somebody else was talking way too much, we were brave enough to kind of say, I call this the shut up, the shut up sticky, in a very nice way, because we're so passionate about everything. The second you see this, somebody else has something to say. And another quality of leadership, how are we comfortable with the uncomfortable? Let our passion aside, let somebody else have that floor for a bit. Yeah.
I think my favorite moments, this is ridiculous and not like actually my favorite thing about the podcast, but when we would like interrupt it and then nobody would know when to go. So we would just be like, no, you go. Okay, I'll start talking. And then we'd like interrupt again and it would go on. It happened a few times that I was just like, oh, we're trying to be nice, but now, oh, this isn't working.
When you're sitting at a coffee shop with some girlfriends, that's how conversation flows.
Yeah.
I mean, we're holding space for each other, but we want to contribute to it as well. And and it's true. None of us are not passionate. You know what I mean? Like we all have our little spin on everything, and it's so excited to say something for sure.
Kristy, Kristy, can I just say something about our guests? I'm not going to go through all of them, but when we had an opportunity to listen to the expertise that came to the table, and you. Oh,
sorry, Mary, I have to interrupt you for 1 second because a child walked in because we're recording this on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Guys, sorry, we're recording. I can't answer right now.
25%.
Yes, go.
Oh, wow.
I missed that.
This could destroy the internet right now. I just agreed to iPad time so that they won't.
Go on.
Hey, whatever works. You know what? I remember when
Sorry.
and I'm on the phone. That's when he needed to talk to me the most. But now with his own littles, my granddaughters,
Yeah.
he's on the phone, they're doing the same thing. I'm like, interesting.
I remember this. Okay, Mary, sorry. I apologize. Go back to what you were saying.
It's about kids and it's about our relationships, and you know what? We get these interruptions, and that's totally fine. But I was thinking about our guests, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there were some guests, all of our guests actually, gave me food for thought in some of the work that I'm doing with my clients. And every one of those guests has populated my arsenal or my package of support for those that I work with. And I'm thinking in particular, all of them, but the one that stands out for me today, especially in light of a conversation that I've had with a few clients as of late, is Dr. Lisa Belanger's work. And she talked about at a very specific time frame, the essence of what burnout looks like, sounds like, and feels like, and how do we support ourselves and each other. And she came up with such a beautiful, and it was right before Christmas, the 12 days of Christmas, tools, resources, and support, and a resource, that whole cup of mindfulness, because now more than ever, I believe we need to be really mindful of who we are, what we can give, what we can't give, because you've heard me say this, and I've got pins to prove it. How are we living well to lead well? You've got those pins, ladies, and
just
what's out there.
I know I saw on Instagram, friends, because that's what I love. On Instagram, Lisa Belanger was just posting. She's doing something with recording. So I am excited to see what Lisa Belanger and her company Conscious Works puts out, because something's going on behind the scenes, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I also was just starting to think about some of the other guests that we had on. I don't know if you recognize this sweater, Helen.
I do.
You were wearing it in our photo shoot with Alexis, and I looked down today, and there's a hole in it. And I was like, this feels like it is just like another sign almost of it's time to put things and change things, and it's okay. I've got to wear this shirt. You've got to wear this shirt, and now it might be something new.
Yeah, it's true. That's well said. And I think we need to stop that mindset where it's not good if we need to change something. Right? You know, it'll be a really positive thing. One of the things I love about Lisa Belanger in particular, this woman has 2 small children and runs a highly successful business. So good. And you sit there and you think, where do you find the time? But she's also not 61, you know? And so you can get a lot of, inspiration from someone like that. Same with Fiona Grosso, who I love, Through the Moon. She just put out a thing on Instagram about cellulite. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Like, she's just so inspirational. It's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Yeah. She's not, she's still a young girl.
Well, I don't know if either of you saw, but she also started talking about skin cancer. And a scare that she had. And that's one of the things that drew me to what she does. She is open to talking about things that are scary, that are tough, and sharing her own experience, not through just words, but visuals too, because that can be really impactful. So I'm glad we're taking a few minutes just to go back and talk about some of these guests that we've had on as well.
Dr. About the beautiful Alexis, who is she's one of those people that's beautiful inside, and she's got the knack to bring out everybody's beauty. As you know, when we did our photo shoot, we had so much fun that day. She even had our charcuterie board for say. Well, I think Connor, her husband, did that, but still, just to think of that, yeah.
And I'm thinking, Helen, as you talk about that, I know, Kristy, we weren't going to throw anything on slide. I'm going to put you on the spot. One of my favorite times was a sleepover. And, Patrick Lencioni talks about off-site meetings. And he talks about the importance of getting together off-site. And sometimes it's deemed as a waste of time, or we don't have time to do that. But how are we intentionally, can you find the photo of us drinking champagne? How are we intentionally taking time to actually plan ahead? I mean, these podcasts, we've put some thought into them, and we had a weekend getaway where we actually took out the chart paper and started talking about what does this mean for our audience and ourselves. And that was one of my favorites. And Alexis, thank you so much for those beautiful, beautiful photos. My worst nightmare, photos and podcasts. I'm getting better at it, though, just saying.
And look at you now, Mary.
The last one with Heather Patterson, we were actually just talking about her book again. I have someone that I'm going to be giving it to at a conference coming up. And I know Mary had mentioned that she has also been talking about it with clients. And I think that is just that the book, the photos, what Heather does is just amazing. And we haven't really had that much time to settle on it because it was just our most recent episode as well.
Well, and I wasn't around for that for some reason. Was I away, or I was sick or something?
I think you were sick.
I think I was sick, and I watched that, and it was just kind of cool to sit back and watch the show. She's super interesting. Well, everybody's super interesting, I think.
And when you get to hear the stories behind people, like sometimes you just see like this little piece, and having those conversations, it's the same way that I feel with digital storytelling. Like we have like a 2 to 4 minute video. That's not their life, but then being able to have a conversation with the storyteller about what that looks like and why they did this, or why this story was important for them to share, is some of the things that I guess I've also learned from this podcast, how to continue those conversations and keep talking.
Well, with your story, with your digital storytelling, I did one with you, and it is just a snippet, but a lot of it is what drives us to what we're doing now, and to be able to tell that through the pictures and 200 words or whatever, how many words we had to do. That's a really difficult thing to bring in that punch of why we do what we do in such a short time, right?
Yeah.
And I think for the audience to lean in when we hear that, short little digital story, and to say, tell me more about that. It's leaning in conversation after the digital story. And Kristy, you do such an amazing job at capturing that. But for us to have those further conversations, Helen, when you talked about, growing up, tell me more about your multiple home environments. Tell me more about how you survived this, and I'm going to just put some words in your mouth and maybe correct me, but you had a real challenging upbringing, and here you are, successful, independent. Like, how did you, and those were the after conversations after we saw your digital story. Tell me more about that, and how did it feel? And, you're a survivor, and what did it take?
What's interesting, you bring that up. I was just thinking about that yesterday, because there's a show on Marilyn Monroe on Netflix that I started watching. And I didn't realize she was a child, kind of bounced around when she was little. And I don't think it was a really interesting segment to her biography. I don't think, obviously she did not survive it. She, fortunately, in those years, you didn't get to kind of explore what we are allowed to explore today. But it was really interesting, because I was listening to it, and she lived in however many different homes, and I thought, and you know what I'm trying to say? Like, everybody's take on their experiences is different, and it does bring in that gratitude piece about how lucky I was to have. I don't feel I'm lucky to have that childhood, but in a lot of ways I do, because I did survive it. And it does, everything makes you who you are today, right? I believe that. But it was interesting to watch a celebrity who she never really did come to terms with what she had to live with as a little girl.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm so glad we're talking about this, and I'm totally going to plug for a second. On May 4th at Arts Place, we're doing a digital story screening. This is the third time we're doing it, and it's Mental Health Week. It's specifically chosen that week because these digital stories can be a jumping off point to talking about some of those things that we don't always talk about. So Helen, this is one of 3 stories that are going to be showcased. It's anybody's invited. You just RSVP, and there is a discussion with each of the storytellers after the fact. And that's my hope, that you maybe hear about a story that isn't your own experience, and that you maybe have questions about, and that our storytellers are there to kind of continue the conversation a little bit further. Because when I co-create a digital story with somebody, it's not my story. I'm learning from them about their story, and I'm supporting them in putting a video together. But having the storyteller there to then continue that conversation, where people sometimes are comfortable asking questions, sometimes aren't, but maybe it's something that they walk away and they look a little further into, or they talk to a friend that they know has had a similar experience and open a conversation in a different area. And it's just, you never know where those ripples are going to lead to. So Helen, I just want to say thank you for being one of the storytellers that's going to be sharing that story. I'm so excited. I didn't hear what she said.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
I don't know. It sounded like an airplane going by on mine. I said, I love my story, and thank you for letting me do it the way we did. It was beautiful. It was lovely to work with you too. Like, I want to do more.
Absolutely. I'm going to make, at some point, Mary's going to do a story too.
Oh yeah. See,
I'm going to need a lot of help, Kristy. I'll do a story, but you need to sit right beside me.
I love it. Well, and just on that, So we've been talking about what's next for Leading Through Stories. So let's kind of go into that because things are going to be changing. We know our time is being drawn in different ways for each of us. And I love leading through stories, but I also want it to go a little more towards digital storytelling. I feel like I shouldn't be the person talking about this. Does anybody want to jump in?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
I think, Kristy, no matter what we call it, the process is going to be similar. And through that digital story component, it's about having conversation. It's about thinking about where I am or where I stand in my particular environment or my particular journey, and digitizing that, making a quick little story, and then opening it up for conversation. So although it might be a little different, I think it's kind of the same. You're going to have guests, and we're going to kind of chime in, and we're going to maybe have a further conversation and allow the process to emerge, is what I'm thinking as we think about next steps.
Yep.
And so I would say to everyone, keep your eyes out. We will send this out to our community who are signed up for our newsletter and let them know. But this is the last episode of this season, and we won't be doing anything until the fall. And conversations will continue between Mary and Helen and I about what's next for Leading Through Stories and what that looks like. And it is going to be changing from what it has been. But what I hope never changes is that the three of us get together and spend time and reconnect. And that's been, we all agreed, one of the biggest thing that's come out of this. The relationship we have and the support we have from each other is something that has made a huge difference in each of our lives.
Really?
And I'm also thinking, Kristy, this might be an opportunity to reinforce with our audience, your voice matters as well. So if you have any ideas of what you'd like to hear more about, or something inspired you from our previous conversations, or something that you might be innovative and creative about, make sure you let us know.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Love you guys.
Helen, I want you to tell us a little bit about some exciting things that have been happening with you, and that we might see your photo somewhere across this country.
Oh my goodness. My friend Camille, who works at Rocky Mountain Soap Company for social, she's a brilliant, lovely young lady. She phoned me one day, hey, do you want to go for coffee? So I'm like, sure. So I've seen her for a long time. Looks like we'd like you to do our lavender spring campaign. And I'm like, huh? Why? I'm not a model. And she goes, well, we need someone older, like a badass grandma. And I said, that's me. So I went in and I did, had no idea. Oh my gosh, it was the most fun day in the world. And the company, so
I'm going to stop you for a second, Helen. We're losing your sound a lot. So if nothing else, I will put a picture from that campaign in. But Helen, try again. Just explain what the campaign is.
It's the spring lavender. So all things lavender.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is with Rocky Mountain Soap. We know you're doing the run. We're hoping that you dress up because the outfit that you were wearing in those photos is phenomenal. I will find a picture and put it on our Instagram account that everybody loves. So that's definitely something to keep your eyes out. I haven't really seen anything up around in Canmore yet. I've only seen it online so far.
Yeah.
You're cutting out, honey.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right.
And might I
keep going?
Yeah, so maybe a bit of a take back, bring back, seeing it's our last episode. I'm really kind of sad. I mean, Kristy, you talked about a bit of emotion, absolutely, but and we'd like to kind of remind our audience that take back, bring back is so important. Any kind of learning that you do, what are you going to take back and kind of put into action as you leave? We are very fortunate. This May, actually, I'm very blessed to share that Artemis Evangelidi, who has published the book Life Thoughts That Make the World Go Around, Up and Not Down. Great little leaflet book. As you see, I use it quite regularly. She's coming to Canmore. I am going to be hosting a coffee with Artemis, Helen, Kristy, and anybody else who might be interested She's come to us originally from Cyprus, now is living in Australia, is an amazing lawyer, but is also has her own company, leadership development company. And we're going to be really focusing on two essential words: the courage it takes to lead, and how do we embed gratitude in our learnings. So we'll keep you posted. May 27th, coffee with Artemis, Mary, Helen, and anybody else who might be interested.
Perfect. All right. Well, on that note, ladies, it's been a pleasure. Happy end of season 2. Definitely take time to go outside. The weather here in Canmore is beautiful. I am going skiing with my boys. You may have just noticed that another one showed up
That's
as you were telling us that. But it has been an absolute honor.
Ditto.
Ditto.